description of how to generate a competitive advantage, I'm going to use a relatively unusual company to discuss cost leadership, and that's a company called J. Hilburn. This is a relatively new company based in Dallas, and their product is, believe it or not, custom tailored dress shirts, and now they're expanding in their clothing line even further. So what's different about J. Hilburn is how it sells its shirts. Rather than going to a high-end clothing store or to a tailor, it instead is based on direct sales, typically women who go out, measure men, show them the various fabric swatches, and order the shirts. They are constructed and then mailed directly to the customer. So typically, the way companies generate a competitive advantage is often through scale or through highly efficient operations. In this case, J. Hilburn really doesn't have either of those going for them. They are not the largest shirt company, although as they get bigger and more successful, they're able to negotiate tougher deals with suppliers. And their shirts are actually a little bit more expensive to make than what many custom tailorers do, or when they're sent to China for custom tailoring, because they are cut to order. They end up with a higher degree of waste, and because they're typically making them in smaller lots, they pay a little bit more money to have the shirts constructed. The analysis I read in one magazine says that it costs them to make the shirt about an extra $10 to $15 a shirt, which seems terrible and a huge disadvantage until you consider that a custom shirt often costs close to $400, which just blows my mind. But J. Hilburn charges about $140 in the comparison shirt that I read the analysis of. Well, how does it do that? Well, what J. Hilburn has done is they've come up with a new business model, and it costs them a lot less to compensate their salespeople, their direct salespeople who go into the houses of their clients and the like, than it does to sell through traditional bricks and mortar. But yet it provides that high-touch service, individual tailoring, custom measured, touch and feel of the fabric, made to order, as the rest of their competitors. So their position is in the high-end custom shirt. They are the low-cost company. They are sacrificing the feel of going into the store, but they're taking it by bringing it out to people. And yet they cut out tremendous cost in the process. Even though they pay a little bit more to make the shirt, they have to pay to air freight the shirt, and sometimes their return rates, at least in the past, have been a little bit higher. None of that matters so much because they've cut out, through business model innovation, a huge source of cost called the brick and mortar retailer. So there's an example of a cost leader and how it was able to achieve that cost leadership position. That's a unique situation, though, which is why I like it. The standard mindset of a cost leader is that it manages to do everything cheaply. And when you look at the value chain, and the charts in the textbook are excellent, where it points out the differences in the value chains, you see that typically the value chain fits together through the standard emphasis on we will drive out cost at every turn. It's almost like we will always settle for the 80% solution so long as it's good enough and it is inexpensive. So it's all about driving out the cost at every step and turn. At one point, when Target was doing much better than Walmart, and this was really before the economy took a big downturn, Walmart made a real effort to move upscale in their clothing offerings in particular, and it didn't work. I'll talk about that a little bit more later, but part of the reason it didn't work was they weren't able to manage the trade-offs, and they weren't able to generate the fit with quote-unquote the Walmart way and how it managed its value chain. What is particularly effective about a cost leadership strategy from a Porter's Five Forces perspective? Well, it's a very strong position. Why? From the buyer standpoint, you're on par with everybody else, and you have either fatter profit margins or you're cheaper. In either way, if it turns into a price war, you're able to win that price war because your costs are lower. Likewise with the suppliers, if suppliers start to squeeze you, you can handle that better than your rivals because you have the lowest cost. As far as the threat of new entrants, it's harder to enter because they have a hard time coming in and turning a profit because you're already running things very efficiently. And for substitute products, they have, as they improve their value equation, they have to be able to beat you again. They have to be able to offer something that's got more value at a lower price. I'm trying to stumble in there a little bit, I'm sorry. So you see it's a relatively strong position. Now, a lot of people say, woo, a real weakness, though, of the cost leadership strategy is it's easy to imitate. Who doesn't have a hard time imitating this? And this is where I'm going to take an exception to what Michael Porter said in that article I had you read, What is Strategy? He said, operational effectiveness is not a strategy. Well, okay, but for the most part in a cost leadership strategy, it's all about operational effectiveness. That's what drives a cost leadership strategy, is that you are all about operational effectiveness. And Mr. Porter made an assumption in that first article that I don't think is valid, and that is that all companies are equally effective in being operationally efficient. Disagree. Different companies succeed in varying degrees when they try to become operationally effective. In fact, it's probably a real art to figure out where you can economize and where you should not economize. So I don't really think when this is done well that this is that easy to imitate, but that is one of the criticisms of it. The other criticism, though, or the problem with the cost leadership strategy is when, in fact, you move too far below the industry standard product, or you come at all below the industry standard product, and it becomes all cost, no customer. And this would be when nobody wants your product. So if I to pick on Little Caesars, and I'm not saying this is where they are now, but let's say that Little Caesars, the quality of their pizza just deteriorated to the point that people weren't willing to eat it anymore. No matter how cheap it is, it doesn't matter. It's too far. Not only is it not the industry standard, it's too far away from the industry standard, and people won't pay for it. Flip side of this is the differentiation strategy, and people are pretty aware of the differentiation strategy. You're looking for product features, prestige, image, something like that that makes your product stand out, usually closely affiliated or associated with a strong brand. But this is the key thing. How does a differentiation strategy lead to a competitive advantage? It does only if a company is able to charge a lot more for their product than it costs for them to add that differentiation to the product. It's going to be very easy for you in the BSG simulation to run a differentiation strategy. However, unless you manage your costs well, you won't be able to price your shoes high enough to cover the costs that you incurred to make that really, really nice shoe. So the art of this is to be able to charge a lot more for whatever it is you upgraded beyond what it cost you. And so this is also the weakness of the differentiation strategy that doesn't always work. Now let's talk about a company that I think is a great example of differentiation strategy, and that is Patagonia. And let's look at their value chain and see how that fits. Patagonia is a line of outdoor clothing, and we'll see some of the trade-offs that are involved with how they do business. So they're very high-end. They build themselves as very eco-conscious. So they're careful where they source the materials, which means they can buy from some suppliers, but not others, typically not the low-cost provider. In terms of research and development, they say all of our employees are outdoors people, and we make these products because we first use these products. So because of that, I don't want to say they have a high R&D budget, but they have a workforce that's relatively well compensated that is somewhat less efficient in the sense that they're out using their stuff a lot and playing around with it to try to design the better equipment. And then they invest in things like a lot of corporate social responsibility, environmental causes. And I'm not saying that it's a ruse, that this is all just fake, because I really believe the founder of the company does believe in this stuff, but it costs money to do that. And so you can write that off as marketing money, if you will, because it establishes the brand. And incidentally, this founder of Patagonia is brilliant because he gets interviewed a ton. And his standard thing is, I'm not a businessman, I don't know anything about business, I just know great products and like building them. Maybe, but I would say you're doing a really good job of running a differentiation strategy. And then in terms of the other fit in the value chain, can you buy Patagonia in Walmart? You can't. It's not consistent with the Patagonia image. You can't even buy Patagonia in Academy. I checked online, there's only one small boutique here in Wichita Falls that sells Patagonia. So a part of a trade-off for them is because they're only selling through the high-end channels, excuse me, and I'm sure online too, they don't have as great of market exposure. But it's okay because go price a Patagonia piece of equipment. It's expensive, considerably more than what you can buy a product that at least seems like it should do the same job. Of course, Patagonia is going to tell you it does it better, and I'm sure it does, but you can bet that it didn't cost them nearly as much to make it better than they're charging you vis-a-vis their competitors. So how does the differentiation strategy work as far as Porter's Five Forces go? Well, the key is by boosting the customer loyalty, you've induced switching costs and you've successfully differentiated the product. Those two things in combination means the customer is less price sensitive and they're less likely to switch based on price. And now that helps you out, obviously, with the power of the buyer. As far as the suppliers go, if they raise prices, you typically have profit margins that can withstand that. As far as new entrants, because you have a differentiated product, people have to come in with something different to try to peel away your customers. And substitute products, it's hard for them to rise to meet the value that you're generating through this highly differentiated product. And so that's how the differentiation strategy in theory works. How does it fail? Well, the number one mistake a differentiator makes is it overprices its product. And people say, I like you, I just don't like you that much. And I can tell you, some of you, if you choose in the BSG to go for a very differentiated strategy, one of the mistakes you may make is overpricing your shoe and say, we have the best shoe in the business. And people going, yeah, but I'm not going to pay an extra $15 a shoe for it. Also, the part of the differentiation strategy is that you know what people care for and you know what they value. To the extent that you put products and features into equipment or into your product that people don't care about, then you haven't gotten anywhere. And then likewise, that imitability is also a concern. Once it's proven that your product is popular, can somebody step in and copy it very easily? Then there's Porter's focus strategies, and really all this is saying is that we find a particular niche that we operate in. In the example of my pest control companies, if you think about it, most of them operate where? In Wichita Falls. They have a geographic focus strategy. Sometimes companies have the option to focus other places, they just choose not to. So you could say Alaska Airlines is focused on the northwestern United States. By the way, they fly into Mexico too. Well, okay. Sometimes they focus on a particular demographic. And one of the questions that you ask yourself is, it's clear that you can focus on high-end customers. For example, all of these business jet, fractional ownership, and leasing companies, we know they're focusing on the very high-income people, and they're successful doing that. But don't discount the fact that you can focus on low-end customers as well. There are insurance companies that focus on providing state minimum coverages as cheaply as possible. So they're focused on folks that either can't or are not willing to invest anything in car insurance other than what it takes to be legal. In this downturn, I'm not necessarily proud of this, but I can tell you I know a lot of people that are associated with finance companies. Given that for economic reasons and legal reasons, a lot of people who have valid credit needs have been driven out of the credit markets. These people are doing very well. I've kind of mentioned that in class already. So you can't be deceived as to where you can focus. You need product requirements, for example, the oil field industry, where they are very good at focusing on the particular needs of the drillers. The risks are also pretty clear here. One is that you focus too narrowly and the market isn't big enough. Another is that you really do find a good area to focus in, but that other people enter it, particularly the bigger competitors enter it, and they take away your focus strategy. And the third is that you know what the trade-offs are. The trade-offs are you're limiting your market size. So you know that you've limited your sales because you've only got this many people you can serve. So the temptation becomes, if you're successful in that focus, is, oh, we're so good at this. We want to grow out of this focus. And then they stumble badly as they try to grow out of the focus. You can make an argument that Southwest Airlines is one of those companies that has really done a nice job of emerging from a focus strategy. Southwest, for many years, avoided the major airports in the major metropolitan areas for operational reasons, but that was a type of focus strategy. And now they are operating at most of the major markets and most of the major airports. For example, they go into Dulles, they go into National, they go into LaGuardia or Kennedy, I'm not sure which, I think it's LaGuardia. They go into Los Angeles International. These are all markets that for many years they stayed away from. They're even looking to go into international markets. Well, that was something they weren't doing before, but they seem to be doing very successfully. So we're going to talk about, though, what I think is a better way to think about these strategies in the next video. Look forward to talking with you then.